What are your best examples of people exhibiting the Dunning-Kruger effect when people are too ignorant to understand why they're wrong? I fix boats for a living and I can tell you, there is probably no subject in existence where everyone knows better than you than boats and boating. Quote someone on a repair. No, that's way too much for the work there. Tell them their deck is rotten from years of water seeping in. No, you're wrong. I take very good care of my boat. It's crazy. A customer came back to the shop with his tablet. It doesn't work like it should, he told us. We turn it on, and it just works, but before we could ask any details, he says we're doing it wrong, takes the thing out of our hands, and tries turning it on again by holding down the power button, but then when the logo appears, he keeps holding down the power button, so it shuts off again. See, it's turning off, it's not working. 30 minutes, several tech guys, and one boss later, he leaves with a new tablet, just to get rid of him. Half an hour later he's back. This one has the same problem. The boss is willing to give him his money back if he promises to never set foot in our shop again. A few days later he gives us a call. He bought a no-brand tablet in a local supermarket, and Wadiak now, it has the same problem. Could we maybe help him with it? My dad thinks he's hot crap at day trading in the real estate market because he once managed to make money on both. So he keeps buying more stocks, and he keeps making plans to become a real estate agent. He buys self-wealth books and buys into pyramid schemes. He has no certifications. Now he's in debt because of bad trades and pyramid schemes, but is still convinced he's going to turn it around and become rich. Your father has a gambling addiction and needs professional help. If you ask him if he's due for a payout on his stocks, I promise you he will say yes. When I was in high school 70s, I thought I was a good singer. I sang in a couple of bad bands. Later, I built a recording studio and worked with bands, learning more and more about music. The more I learned, the less good I believed I was, but I kept practicing for years. A few years ago, I took vocal lessons from an excellent teacher. I believed I was close to being a good singer and just needed some minor tweaks. He showed me how far away the goalpost really was. Looking back to high school, I sucked balls while believing I sounded good. Hooray, an actual example. As a singer, it's not until you see someone who can really sing that you realize how you're not a good singer. A random person started debating with me about the statistical significance of a work I was doing. He is studying philosophy while I'm studying statistical science. I've paid attention to him because there's always the possibility that I've made a mistake, but that wasn't the case. While I'm studying statistical science, I've paid attention to him because there's always the possibility that I've done a mistake. You're doing the right study, good luck. I work for a financial institution, so I have too many examples to count. Mostly people that try to argue math when it's done by our system automatically. Both my brother-in-law and his now ex-wife. He thinks he's going to retire in 10 years. He's in his 20s without a degree. Even billionaire tech startup geniuses don't retire in 10 years. She can't figure out how people know so much about the shenanigans she's pulling with her custody agreement, denying bill time with his child, etc. She thinks she blocked everyone in the family on everything, but she lets strangers add her on Instagram all the time and she publicizes her wrongdoing. Yesterday I got into it with a guy who was pissed off that the new iPhones don't have cameras with more megapixels. Well, I design consumer electronics for a living, including some with cameras. So I mentioned that having more megapixels doesn't automatically mean the resulting image will be better. I pointed out that there are many factors that go into making a camera produce better images, and that the number of pixels is only one of them. I also pointed out that if you don't improve these other things along with the pixel count, increasing the pixels can actually produce a worse image sometimes. Well, he wasn't having it. To him, more meant better, no matter what. Decades of consumer electronics industry experience could not hold a candle to his observation of 10 is better than 20. I just checked, and his comments got foul-mouthed enough that a moderator removed them. Unfortunately, most people don't want to learn anything from anyone who might be aware that they're sharing new information. I got lucky sometime in me teens. when I realized that anyone who is accurately correcting me is giving me the gift of replacing something incorrect in my thoughts with something that is correct. I feel like a lot of the smartphone wars from back in the day were just about people reading off spec sheets at one another without either person knowing what they were saying. My elder brother asked me for a copy of the Bible once. I said that I had a couple of them I'd inherited, and asked which one he would prefer. He asked, well, is it the Old or the New Testament? I was like, what? It's both of them. That's stupid, he said. They're the same thing. He said this very confidently. It turned out he thought the New Testament was just the Old Testament in updated language, like reading Beowulf in modern English, and it was surprisingly hard to convince him that he was wrong. He was so confident about this ridiculous statement that remembering it makes me laugh to this day. Moses came down from McDonald's with the Snapchat from God outlining the 10 rules to live by. Number 6 will shock you. I work for a CPS contractor and supervise visits. You would be shocked about the parents I work with think they know parenting, even though their children are removed from the home. Some examples include dads trying to frick the gay out of their kid by molesting them, parents yelling at children to be quiet, wondering why their kids hit others as they hit their children, why Mountain Dew doesn't help their kid fall asleep, why an infant shouldn't drink Mountain Dew, why shooting H while pregnant is bad for the child. I don't want the stress of withdrawals to hurt the baby. It still boggles my mind that people think they can rape the gay out of someone. My co-worker who ignores every stated protocol for someone with his job description. All he is required to do is gather the data to be entered about the customer. Each time, he tries to enter the data himself. He has not been trained for this. Why? Because he is computer illiterate at age 68. The customer can wait for 24 hours for the data entry to gain them normal customer access to our business. There is nothing immediately necessary for the customer. I've complained. He gets mad. He's quit. Then he's come back. He kept doing it. Boss does nothing. Meanwhile, to fix his mistakes take 48 hours longer. Bothers the IT person. Creates more work for more departments. The client has now received poor customer service. I mean, it's protocol for this very reason. Last time he did that, our entire department and the IT guy refused to help him fix his mistake. The customer repeatedly came in on his shift and asked why the perks weren't set up yet. This co-worker of mine then yelled at me, "What is the problem with IT?" I calmly said, "I don't know, Bob. I'm supposed to be the only person that is supposed to contact IT. This situation happens when another co-worker doesn't follow protocol. I guess you need to figure this out for yourself." He walked away and in front of customers yelled, "Frick that. I fricking won't comply." IT's customer service. The customers were shocked. I filed a formal complaint on him for disturbing customers. Guess what? He now complies. I post on our Out of the Loop a lot, which means I invariably have to deal with people who have, let's say, an opposition to reality. The most recent note on one of my posts was a complaint that I included too many facts and sources as a way of confusing people. For real, the argument was that I was providing so much evidence that conflicted with their worldview that I was obviously just lying to them, and so couldn't be trusted. How do you even argue with that? A co-worker argued to me he's not racist, he's just prejudiced towards certain races. I told him that's the literal definition of racist and he said it's different. I know a guy who told me he's against gay marriage because the Bible says it's wrong, but his reasons for being against it are not religious. Tax brackets. In the US, personal income tax has always been a progressive tax, meaning that as one earns more, one pays a higher percentage, and designed in such a way that earning more never results in a net loss to the earner. Plenty of people insist that going into a higher tax bracket can and does cause a net loss to the individual. That's not only untrue now, it has been for as long as there's been personal income tax in the United States. I did accounting for insurance policies. Customers would constantly ask for audits. Nearly every audit done was because the customer was just one payment behind. When I started at the company, I wasn't assigned audits, but was amazed at how many I saw coming through the department every week. Hundreds. Many of them were audits of the same policies too. After a couple of months, I got curious. especially because these customers would occasionally get transferred to our department when they became insistent. The first time I saw how my co-workers were auditing, I knew exactly what was wrong. Instead of telling the customer the exact date each payment was received, the audit just stated the month, and if a payment was received. So, January, yes. February, yes. etc. etc. Not only that, but they had a strict policy of going only 6 months back. Most customers had a due date at the beginning of the month. They'd send their payments out a few days prior. So, let's say someone skips a month, possibly years ago, then they continue to send their payments at the end of the month. A payment that was due on the 4th, but arrives on the 31st. The audit will show payment received for that month. But boom, new payment is due 4 days later. I presented this to my supervisor, and he just did not get it. He kept repeating, but if they paid that month, how are they behind? Because they skipped a payment at some point, possibly years ago, and this has been floating ever since. This isn't advanced stuff. I took over the audits. It didn't even take much extra time. I send an audit, as far back as the late payment, to every customer who had a request. We went from 100 audits a week to about 5. My supervisor never figured out how I did it. Obviously you're a genius who deserved a raise. Hope you got it. The amount of people who don't understand what the Dunning-Kruger Effect actually describes, but use the term all the time anyway. Such as this thread, so many posts have nothing to do with it. It's just people being stupid wrong. It's freaking hilarious. I work at a car dealership, and people honestly have no freaking clue what they're talking about when it comes to their vehicles, but they will always swear they know more than you. My favorite is when they say, well, I read on a forum that it's X, so why are you telling me it's Y? Or well, my mechanic said that it's in good condition. I work as an auto damage adjuster for insurance companies. I get a lot of this, too. My co-worker is convinced that aspartame causes brain cancer, and when I told her that it didn't, she asked me how I was sure I was right. I informed her I have a degree in medical technology with a focus in chemical testing. She then laughed at me and told me that I was way out of my league because chemistry and food science are different fields of study. She has a 30-year-old degree in social work. We both work the same entry-level position. What concerns me is that she's too stupid to know that the sciences are related. Worked on group project as a final exam on my sociology degree. My group consisted of 5 people, myself included. This one guy, you know the kind of guy, he's done great before uni by being a suck up to teachers. He come across as a very competent guy due to confidence. During the initial process of planning, he would interrupt everyone saying, with resignation, I'll just do it, if you guys can't. Even though it was never an issue that no one couldn't. We made him write the entire chapter of theory. We had to edit it full on 2 times, because he obviously didn't understand it. The project is written in our mother tongue, but almost all literature was in English, so the majority of the chapter was just quotes from articles, which he could not translate or tell the meaning of. He later translated indifference to alienation. He was not involved in any data collection and didn't understand basic math. When we explained what the hard data meant, he said that he didn't agree with us and just couldn't see it from our point of view. Despite the data wasn't relative, he still had that I am better than you attitude. Alas, at the exam me and another student got an A and he got a C. Still he thinks he is smarter. This one guy who is a climate change denier got into an argument about it with my friend. He ended up saying, wow, look at you got all liberal, you will believe everything you read on the internet now, huh? Please note that my friend was an environmental science major in college. Yup, my dad told me no hurricanes hit the US for 18 years before Katrina. When I showed him Wikipedia has maps of every hurricane to hit the US since the 1880s. It's cool. He told me he doesn't care what evidence I found on the internet. He shut up when I reminded him we were in Florida for a hurricane in 2002. My dad absolutely refuses to acknowledge that Finland exists. Even when I show a map to him and show him Finland, he will adamantly deny it exists. Once had someone explain to me that Superman could be the Man of Steel, but Supergirl couldn't be the Woman of Steel because a uterus couldn't be made of steel. so she wouldn't be able to carry children. I tried explaining that the uterus in Supergirl's body would have the same cell tissue structure as the organs in Superman's body, but to no avail. From anyone else, I would have assumed that this was an anti-feminist comment, but from this guy it was pure lack of understanding of how the human superhuman body works. Uterus of Steel would be a good name for a all-girl punk band. Remember that episode of Futurama where Leela goes back to that orphanarium and she's like a legit space captain and has good friends and is doing pretty dang great and she is proud of herself? Meanwhile all of the other people at the reunion are like degenerate and addicts and homeless and crap. But when she tries telling them about her success they just patronize her and are like, that's so good for you. You should be really proud of everything considering you have only one eye. That's how my family treats me, except I have both eyes. To all my peers and myself, I'm successful. But anytime I cross paths with my mom's sisters and brothers and all their offspring they just patronize me and talk down to me. Even though by all rights they have no leg to stand on. They are just miserable people. Jail time, addictions, kids that they didn't want and can't afford, all living in squalor, etc. But I don't go to church so I'm a moron, and if something good happens to me it's luck or someone feeling sorry for me, and that's why I get opportunities. Out of pity. Haha. The whole thing is bananas. A motto I've recently adopted is speak with the confidence of an anti-vaxxer who is smugly telling their GP to do their research. I know a guy that keeps saying he wants a house that's done, as in, well kept, in great condition, with some property. He makes $11 HR and has 3 kids. He won't apply for another job. He keeps renting. That's not how it works. In one of my jobs I work as a lifeguard, and in Australia, may only be my state but I believe it's countrywide, we have a policy called Watch Around the Water regarding children, and the water part of that policy is that children under 5 must be supervised at arm's length by a guardian over the age of 16. Obviously young parents are the exception to the age rule, who has to be in the pool with them. The number of parents when approached over not supervising their child properly, sitting on their phone or reading a book or talking to other parents, say my child can swim or I'm standing right by the edge of the pool astounds me, especially when it is very clear the child isn't a strong swimmer yet is on the opposite side of the pool to their parent and not being watched at all. The parents are either just too ignorant of the child's actual ability or they just don't care enough to supervise them properly. Technically my best friend. He says a lot of things and I say I don't agree or I don't have something, etc. And he says I didn't say that, I said this. One example is that I was on a call with him once and it went like this. BF. Best friend. I ordered my new bike. Me. Oh cool. BF. It's the same brand as yours. Me. Go on then, what is it? I asked what is it because I took the logo stickers of my bike so I won't get picked on at my school by what it is. BF. It's an Apollo. Me. Number. My bike's not an Apollo. BF. What are you talking about? Me. My bike. It's not an Apollo. BF. No, I asked what style. Me. No you didn't. You asked brand. BF. Yes I did. Me. Then why did you say Apollo? That isn't a style, that's a brand. By this point we went silent. I don't know if it really counts to this because he's not ignorant. He's just always acting like he's right. Ugh. Your friend sounds like my dad. As a bartender, I've had customers and staff telling me that I am wrong for doing certain things with drinks. 1. Floor staff telling me there was no head on a cider he was bringing for someone. When I told him you don't give cider with a head, he stared at me and kept telling me that you do. 2. Customer just last week complaining about getting a lime with a tequila, that only lemons go with tequila, and proceeded to drunkenly lecture me which drinks lemon and or lime goes in. In truth you can use either lemon or lime, I've just been told lime. I don't think Reddit will like this, but an analyst of China named Gordon Chang, he wrote a book called The Coming Collapse of China, in which he explained why China would fall within 5-10 years. The book was published in 2001. In the long run I agree with him, for generally the same reasons, plus some different ones, but I put the collapse in about 20-30 years from now. My mum thinks that using a tanning bed before going on holiday will prevent skin cancer. She then tells me that being an undergraduate doesn't make me smart, and that I can be wrong about things. Wrong, right, right. I was buying beer from a local convenience store. Cashier asked for my ID, so I provided. She rings me up but claims that she is doing me a favor because the ID is expired by month. I double check and my ID expires the previous month but of the following year, so still valid for another 11 months. I tried telling her this and I spent a good couple minutes explaining how months and years work but she wasn't having it. Conversation went like the following. Me. Okay, so it's June 2017, right? Cashier. Yeah, me. The expiration date says May 2018, right? Cashier. Yeah, me. So it expires next year? Cashier. No, it's already expired. Me. The expiration date says May of next year. After repeating that several times I just shook my head and left with my beverages. Working is social services. Pretty much anything related to addiction, homelessness, sex work, etc. I had a guy send in a long, drawn-out email the other day, detailing exactly how he thinks we can solve the opioid crisis, end child sex work, and house every single homeless person in the world. When I asked how he expected to fund it, he said the city would fund it obviously since it's their issue. When I asked how much he expected to pay in taxes to cover this funding boom, he said it was ridiculous to expect people to pay taxes for W and junkies. I asked again, if we're expecting the city to pay, but not expecting taxes be how we cover that expense, how do we get this funded? He called me a bunch of very nice names and said I was missing the point. I just told him to have a nice day after that. That's the problem with most issues. People want them solved but they sure as heck aren't going to doing anything for it. My old roommate talking about how the world was only 6,000 years old and the dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Flood. I brought up carbon dating and she said it was a myth created by the devil to lead people away from the truth. There's professional athletes that are experts in off-season sports moves. This summer, Antonio Brown was convinced he was one of those guys. I'm pretty sure Antonio Brown still thinks he's one of those guys. Antonio Brown is not one of those guys. My wife has a cousin with a master's degree in writing, specifically persuasive writing. She is also an anti-vaxxer, anti-chemical, anti-whatever conspiracy theorist. It boggles my mind. Maybe she should have got a degree in science. I have this cousin, Alexis, who's a phlebotomist, consequently works around doctors every day. For some reason she thinks this granted her a PhD in every medical field, by osmosis. I don't know. We have many arguments about bones. I like them. She doesn't understand them. Story. One day I was doing the rounds, saying goodbye to my family and trying to be on time to not lose my flight. Clarence, my cousin's elderly grandma, slipped and fell. I went to check on her as fast as I noticed, which was, unfortunately, a good 10 minutes later at least. She had very clearly fractured something in her wrist. I didn't want to touch it, not to hurt her, and I don't have X-ray vision, so I didn't know what. Alexis didn't want to call an ambulance because her grandma was fine. It was just bruised. It would go away with a bit of ice. I called an ambulance, waited for them to arrive and start loading Clarence and then left. Now I have to admit my fault in all of this. PPL and my family mock me all the time for using technical terminology, so instead of saying fractured bone I said Clarence had a broken bone. Next day she called me. I was luckily abroad, ripping me a new one, because Clarence's trip to the hospital had been unnecessary, because her wrist was fractured and not broken. I tried to explain to her that it is the same thing, and asked what type of fracture it was and what bones were involved. To this day I don't know, because apparently I'm ignorant and just want to waste other people's time. People who deny science and then use something that was disproved by science to back up their doubt. Oh sure, the scientists know that we are causing climate change, just like they knew that the earth was flat. No, people thought that the earth was flat, and science proved that it wasn't. See how that works? Most people who hold fringe views, for example, flat earthers, anti-vaxxers, creationists etc., fall squarely into this category. Their arguments to support their own beliefs and own the scientists are the types of questions literal children would ask and which would be answered easily if they had even an introductory level knowledge of the thing they were arguing against. For example, if humans evolved from monkeys, Why are there still monkeys? People are so stupid and so radically overestimate their own intelligence that they genuinely believe that, out of the millions billions of people in the world who know what evolution is, they were the first person to think of this, and that everybody else just blindly accepted evolution without that basic thought occurring to them and without that question having a satisfactory answer that you would be able to find out right now just by googling it. People then take on a smug attitude without realizing the reason why people don't debate them on these issues isn't because the other side doesn't know the answer, but because the questions they have asked reveal them to be so stupid and uninformed and behind on the science that nothing of value can be gained from rehashing these baby's first creationist argument level conversations over and over again. I used to play RTS games a lot. By far, the most common situation I would encounter were people who would turtle and insist that rushing wasn't real strategy, even though they would lose by turtling every time. I mean, it's a freaking real-time strategy game. Doing things faster than your opponent is literally part of the gameplay mechanics and you need to develop a strategy that accounts for that. If you need artificial no-rush rules to win or even survive, your strategy is fundamentally wrong, by definition. Yet in the face of defeat, they would still insist they were right and that I was playing the game wrong. When you tell an adult to stop trying to kill a bee because they're endangered and they are an important part of the society and the adult says so. Thought your username said Chief Bee for a second and I was like, nice try bee, lol. Side note, I was terrified of bees until about a year ago, when my then boyfriend killed one after I freaked out. I felt so bad contributing to the potential endangerment of the bees that I decided it's time to stop being afraid of them, but I still freak out on the inside. Just a little. People who don't vaccinate their children. People who think that being LGBT is a choice. People who think that the earth is flat. People in serious legit cults but still think it's healthy for them. People like Karen or Susan. You know, those people. My 6th grade teacher believed a frog's kinetic energy went up when it was jumping and moving up and its kinetic energy went down when coming down. She also believed potential energy went down when it was moving up and went up when it was going down. I started to explain but my teacher wouldn't let me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.